Okay, hi everybody. Welcome to another English class here on verbling.com. My name is Lisa, and I'm one of the English teachers here at Verbling. And in today's class, in this hour, we're going to be having a reading class. So we're going to be reading an article together that I put up in the Verbling chat box already. And I just put it there again. So if you click on that, it will open up a new window for you with the document in it. If you have a reservation already for this hour, you can use it now. If you don't have a reservation, just wait a minute and you can join when you see the join class button. So hi Rafael, how are you?
I'm fine, thanks for asking you.
I'm doing well, thank you. How's the beginning of your new year?
just the same as the last year ended.
The same as last week. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. How's the weather? Hot?
Hot, very hot.
Does it rain much in Rio at this time?
No, not in Rio. São Paulo has rained a lot, but not here in Rio.
Oh yeah, that's what I was wondering. Okay. When does Rio get the rain? More like in January, February, or?
I think it's the same as São Paulo, but normally after November, the rain starts to fall. But there has been some droughts here.
Oh.
So the amount of rain, we haven't had enough rain as the same amount of rain we had previous years. But
okay.
I don't know. I think in January normally the amount of rain increases normally. I don't know. Let's expect that something better with the weather happens in the next weeks.
Yeah.
Because it's complicated.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't realize that Rio was also having a drought. I thought it was mostly Sao Paulo, but okay. And I know they're getting some rain now, so that's good. Okay, guys, welcome everybody. Come on in. Say hi to everybody. Hi, Quentin. How are you?
Hi, teacher. I'm good. Thank you for asking.
Good. Welcome. Happy New Year. Hi, Luis. How are you doing?
Hello. I'm great.
Hi.
Thank you.
Luis, where's your picture from?
My picture is from Brazil.
What part? Where were you?
Now I am in Minas Gerais.
Is that where
Belo Horizonte, capital.
Is that where the picture is?
It's close here.
Okay, cool. All right, nice. And Elena, hi Elena, how are you?
Hi, how are you?
I'm okay. Welcome. I still have my cold a little bit, so my voice is not normal, but it's okay. We'll see how it goes. Araceli, how are you doing? Long time no see.
Yes, long time no see you too. I've been with the flu too, and
so on your vacation?
No, I'm back to school.
Okay.
But these holidays were a little like at bed, fever like that.
Oh no. Yeah, a lot of people are sick around here too. I got a text message from my friend. I'm actually in California right now. I'm visiting my mom and my family members. But up in Washington, people are still getting sick. But it's warmer down here.
It's very cold, isn't it, in the States?
It's pretty cold. I mean, in Washington it's usually cold, so it's not too cold. But on the East Coast is probably freezing. That's where it's getting the weather, the cold weather. But today in California, here where I am in Fresno, it's supposed to be 70 degrees, which I don't know what that is in Celsius. Anybody know how to convert fast in your head?
How much did you say?
I said
70?
70. Yeah, so let's see if I convert it. Oh, let me see. More like 19.
21.
19.
Here? Yeah. Here
19.
It says 21 degrees Celsius.
Oh, okay. All right, so around there. So that's pretty good. for this time
Yeah,
of year.
nice temperature. Yeah,
Yeah,
you're
and
lucky.
the sun is shining. Yeah. Okay, Anatoly, how are you? Welcome.
Hello, I'm fine, thank you. Happy New Year.
Yeah, Happy New Year. Thanks. Okay, guys. Well, probably everybody has heard about the news from Paris that happened yesterday. Shooting that happened there. We're going to be reading an article related to that, but it's not exactly like talking about that. You know, when something like that happens, you know, they're reporting on it every hour, and new things are developing and that kind of stuff. So we're not keeping up to date necessarily with what's happening with that. But I found this article, which I thought was interesting, just because I've been studying French, and so I listen to the French news often and stuff. And I was there in May, and it does seem to me that there is this tension there already. So this is just one thing that has happened, which is a horrible thing, of course, but it's representative of what's already been happening in that country. And Quentin can tell us more because he's a firsthand experience of this. But trying to understand, when you're not from that country, you don't know exactly what's happening there. But we can read a little bit. So I thought it was interesting. So the title is "France was gripped by tension even before the shootings at Charlie Hebdo. A growing social gulf has become evident in recent years." So let me just explain a couple things before we get started. So gripped by. So that's kind of a dramatic word, a way to say that it was already experiencing. So if you are gripped by something like fear or tension, it means it's like you're being held by that. So if I grab you with my hands and I'm holding on to you, I'm gripping you. And you're being gripped by me. But in this case, it's kind of like you're being held by this tension. It's like you don't have freedom. You can't move because there's so much tension there. And the tension is just, between the different groups of people, the religion, culture, that type of thing. And the tension is where people feel nervous or anxious or tense, stress, for different reasons. And we're going to read about that. And this was happening, even before. So that's kind of like what he's saying is it's the setting in which this is happening. So there's some kind of context that people might not understand when they just hear the news about shootings or something. So we're going to read this, and as always, I'll read. I'll do my best. If I start coughing or something, I'll be muting my microphone, and if my voice goes, then I'll just have you guys read. But I'll read also, and then of course you guys will read, and then I'll go over some of the vocabulary. And if you have any questions at any time, make sure you ask, and then we will probably have some time for comments, and if you guys want to talk about this, either the article, or if you know what's been happening, or if Quentin, you want to give us some more information, we can have a little discussion too. Okay, a growing social gulf has become evident in recent years. That was the subtitle. The shootings in Paris today at the offices of the French satirical journal Charlie Hebdo come after a steady rise in ethnic tension in France. Though it is too soon to attribute responsibility for the attack, well, not anymore, but the newspaper marked itself out in 2008 by publishing the Danish cartoons caricaturing the Prophet Muhammad, and it defended its decision in the name of freedom of expression. All right, so Anatoly, why don't you go ahead and start?
France was gripped by tension even before the shooting at Charlie Hebdo. A growing social gulf has become evident in recent years. The shootings in Paris today at the offices of the French satirical journal Charlie Hebdo come after a steady rise in ethnic tension in France. Though it is too soon to attribute responsibility for the attack, the newspaper marked itself out in 2008 by publishing the Danish cartoons caricaturing the Prophet Muhammad. It defended its decision in the name of freedom of expression.
So a growing something just means that, it's getting bigger and bigger or larger and larger. And so what they're talking about is the social gulf. When you think of the Gulf, maybe you think of Persian Gulf or the Gulf of Mexico or something like that. It just represents like a space. So the space is widening between the different social groups, and that has become evident. So you have seen it more and more in recent years. So, if you're thinking about France and the different social groups with the immigrants coming from different countries, that's what they're talking about, this growing social divide kind of thing, where the gulf, the space between these people is getting larger and larger. And when you talk about a gulf or a gap between people, it means they're not coming together in, connecting with each other. They're farther apart. So that's usually because of tensions, misunderstandings, frustrations, things like that. Okay, so they're talking about the shootings, and let's see, a steady rise in, so that's the same idea as growing. Steady just means it's not a spike, it didn't happen all of a sudden, but just over time it happens steadily, or it is a steady rise. Satirical, I think you guys probably understand, the paper itself provides satire or satirical commentary. So trying to make fun of, trying to make a joke of, which is a political thing to do, and it's also a fun thing to do. And some people take it very seriously, and maybe some people, everybody has their own responses. But the idea of a satire is that everybody knows you're trying to make a funny commentary about some person or some decision or some cultural tradition, something like that. So that's what they do at this journal. Okay, it is too soon to attribute responsibility. Well, this was written before they caught some of the guys. So to attribute responsibility for something means, just finding out who did it, who is responsible for this. So you attribute or you give responsibility to a certain group of people, or individuals or something, for something. In this case, it's for the attack. It marked itself out. So to mark yourself out means you stand out. It means you're noticed because of this. So they had an issue in 2008 where a Danish cartoon, I guess, had a caricature. So a caricature is a special type of cartoon. Instead of just a cartoon that is not representative of anybody, a caricature represents a person. So usually, like the presidents, if you have political cartoons, they have caricatures of presidents or other politicians, sometimes movie stars, things like that. So the caricature is a type of thing where you're not trying to make the person look exactly like they do, but you make them look a little funny because you're telling a story or a joke or something, and you're drawing them in a funny way. So this was of the Prophet Muhammad, so that was controversial, but they defended their decision. So they stood up for the decision, and they made the decision because they said that was part of what they call freedom of expression. So in France, you are able to the journals, the journalists, the cartoonists, they can freely express themselves, and so that's why they were willing to do that. Okay, along with the yes.
Sorry. Could you explain again what is Danish cartoons? I didn't
Well,
understand.
Danish is from Denmark.
Denmark, yes.
Yes.
But is that right? From Denmark? These cartoons were from Denmark.
That's what. Well, this one right here, maybe this particular one, just the one that was of the Prophet Muhammad. And I don't know. Maybe Quentin knows. It showed up in the journal, but maybe it was actually a Danish person who drew that particular caricature. So that's what I would understand reading this sentence here, but I don't know the history of that particular episode. Quentin, do you know? Did the French press, is it more, because it is a little bit confusing because you think they were all French cartoonists who were working on this journal, but perhaps that particular caricature was from a Danish person.
Yes, Lisa. Some
Elena, oh,
years
you know?
ago,
Okay.
or perhaps someone. Well, yeah, I don't know, a couple or 3-4 years ago,
Yeah.
there was some Danish cartoons who were that was what is that? Some Muslim groups were against those cartoons, and they groups, those groups. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Make a fatwa, I think.
Fatwa, yeah. Like
Yeah,
like-
against the Danish the Danish author of those
Okay.
cartoons.
Uh-huh.
Oh, sorry, I have explained
Yeah, I
myself
just
so bad.
I put a link. Apparently, it shows more that particular one that they were against. There's a little video there if you want to look at it. Quentin, did you want to add something to that? Quentin? Okay.
Sorry?
Did you want to explain that, the Danish cartoons part?
No, it was just representing Prophet Mahomet, yes,
Yeah.
and the French Charlie Hebdo just republish it in French. That's all.
I see. Okay. They just republished it. So it was originally from Denmark, and they republished it.
Yes.
And yeah.
Yes.
And that's the thing that's happening is, you know, I was listening to the French news this morning, and they had an interview with a person from Washington, D.C. who was asking, they were asking him, would this have happened, or is there any kind of, you know, cartoonists who are caricaturing, you know, Muslims and things like that in the United States, and he was saying no, that this is more, you know, it's kind of a French situation because, you know, of the French colonists and how they colonized, you know, Northern Africa and stuff like this. There's a lot of tension between these groups in France specifically. So caricaturing somebody like that in France is creating this tension there. Okay, where it's made.
No, it's the same
in where?
In Germany and
some other
European in Europe.
countries. Yes, as well.
Yes.
Yeah, a lot of immigration has happened in some of those countries for over the last years, and it has led to this tension now. Yeah. Okay, so along with the increase in tension has come the remorseless rise of the National Front. Polls say that if a presidential election was held now, its leader, Marine Le Pen, would top the first round vote ahead of mainstream politicians. FN candidates have scored well in local and European elections and gained their 2 first seats in the Senate last year. Le Pen has softened the rhetoric of her father, the FN's founder, but the anti-immigrant message remains at the core of its appeal, along with concern about law and order. Okay, Araceli.
Along with the increase in tension has come the remorseless rise of the National Front. Polls say that if a presidential election was held now, its leader, Marine Le Pen, would top the first round vote ahead of mainstream politicians. FN candidates have scored well in local and European elections and gained their 2 first seats in the Senate last year. Le Pen has softened the rhetoric of her father, the FN's founder, but the anti-immigrant message remains at the core of its appeal, along with concern about law and order.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so along with, so if you're paying attention to this type of prepositions and things, so along with, or like beside, or at, you know, at the same time, so there's an increase in this tension, and at the same time what's happening is, and he describes it as remorseless rise. So to have remorse means you feel guilty, you say, oh, you know, I shouldn't have said that or something, but remorseless means you're not apologizing for anything. And so the National Front is kind of known, I guess, to be very vocal about their anti-immigrant messages, and they are not apologetic about that. They want France to remain French and not have all of these immigrants coming in and changing the culture and that type of thing. So they're remorseless, and that's why he says remorseless rise of, and this is the party. This is the name of the party, the political party. The polls say, so when they ask French citizens, how they're feeling, they would vote for her right now. And so she's known to be like an extreme right-wing politician, yes, in politics, representing this party. And people would vote for her now, and they're saying, above the mainstream or ahead of the mainstream politicians that are maybe representing more of a, maybe still conservative, but not so extreme point of view. But they're doing better and better, so they've scored well in the elections and gained, or won their 2 first seats in the Senate. She is actually the daughter of the guy who founded the party, and they say she's a little bit softer, so she doesn't, she's not as harsh when she speaks, and that's what they mean here. So she has softened the rhetoric. The rhetoric is her message, like what is she saying when she speaks. And so it's a little bit softer, but it's still an anti-immigrant message. The idea of too many people coming into France and changing the culture, and also concerns about law and order, so safety, security, that type of thing. So this appeals to a lot of people, this idea of trying to maintain French culture and also law and order. Charlie Hebdo's cover story this week is on the latest novel by the controversial writer Michael Houellebecq, which paints a France of the future governed by an Islamic party and a Muslim president who bans women from the workplace and who was elected with mainstream support to block Le Pen. Okay, a survey in 2014 showed French people believing that immigrants made up 31% of the population, 4 times the actual proportion. Okay, Elena. All this.
Charlie Hebdo's cover story this week is on the latest novel by the controversial writer Michael Houellebecq, which paints a France of the future governed by an Islamic party and a Muslim president who bans women for the workplace and who was elected with mainstream support to block Le Pen. A survey in 2014 showed French people believing that immigrants made up 31% of the population, 4 times the actual proportion.
Mm-hmm. So this is interesting. I don't know about this writer or the book or something, but the cover story. So the cover story is the main lead. We call it the lead story. It's the one that is represented on the cover with some kind of graphic or something like that. And it's about the latest or the most recent novel by a controversial writer, so somebody who writes controversial things. And he paints of France. So when you paint a picture or you paint something, it means he shows in his writing this is what he's representing. So it's a future France governed by an Islamic party and a Muslim president who bans, so when a ban means you can't do it, so the women can no longer work, and they were elected with mainstream support to block Le Pen. So it's very political, obviously, and so there's some kind of message in there. I don't know enough about that, but maybe Quentin knows about it. A survey, so again, a poll, a survey, questionnaire, when they're asking people what they believe or what they think about something. The French people seem to think that there are a lot more immigrants than there actually are. So it kind of, we say the expression, they looms large in your mind. So you think, there are 31%, making up the population, but actually that's really 4 times as many as there are really the proportion. So there are a lot less immigrants than people think. On the mainstream right, where former President Nicolas Sarkozy is trying to stage a comeback, a survey of supporters of his UMP party showed the proportion which believed there were too many immigrants in France had risen to 87% from 62% in 2006. Those who felt they lived in conditions of insecurity had increased from 38 to 73% in the same period. France has always expected immigrants to conform to its republican model, but a growing social gulf has become evident, especially among second-generation children of immigrants from North and West Africa. Okay, Luis? Luis, your microphone is muted.
Okay.
There you go.
On the mainstream right, where former President Nicolas Sarkozy is trying to stage a comeback, a survey of supporters of his UMP party showed that proportion which believed there were too many immigrants in France had risen to 87% from 62% in 2006. Those who felt they lived in conditions of insecurity had increased from 38 to 73% in the same period. France has always expected immigrants to conform to its republican model, but a growing social gulf has become evident, especially among second-generation children of immigrants from North and West Africa.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the mainstream. So whenever we say mainstream, we're just talking about what's the most popular in a society or a culture or something. So it's what the opinions and things that you mostly see on the TV or in the newspapers, and that most people hold. They're, if they were different, it would be the alternative. So you have mainstream, and then you have alternative, or you have the extreme, or something like that. So the mainstream right, which is not the extreme right. So that was the former president. So he's trying to stage a comeback. This means he's trying to get popular again, so that maybe he can become president again, I guess. So he's staying in the political sphere, and he wants to stage a comeback or make a comeback. So his supporters, they also are believing that there are too many immigrants. So it used to be maybe just more of an extreme right position, but now even the mainstream right, the typically conservative politicians and people who support them, they also believe that there are too many immigrants in France right now. So 87% of them. Those who felt they lived in conditions of insecurity, so they did not feel safe, has also increased or risen. So to rise, or you can say has risen, or had risen there in the past. So that's, more and more people are thinking this way. They're explaining that France as a country, they always expect their immigrants to conform to their republican model of government there. So to conform to something means you're supposed to come in and support that model, and we say fit in. You're supposed to follow the rules, the laws, that type of thing. But there's this growing social gulf. So maybe what that's suggesting is a lot of them are not following the Republican model. So especially the second generation children. So those are people, the immigrants who moved to France and then had their children, and now they've been living there, and then they've been having their children. So it's a little while. Quentin is letting us know that interestingly, this isn't true for every country. Sometimes when you get citizenship in one country, you have to give up your citizenship of the other country where you're from originally, and that's not true in France. So perhaps people, even though they're moving to France, they don't necessarily feel French. They still feel like they're from their native country. So that is causing some problems perhaps for people. Okay, there is increasing questioning of France's immigration policy and the pursuit of communitarianism. 900 young people from France are estimated to be fighting with the extremist forces in Syria/Iraq. A socialist deputy from the Paris suburbs, Sebastien Pietrasanta, who has worked for an anti-racist organization, notes that for some young people, the feeling of having a religious affiliation is stronger than the feeling of belonging to the Republic. Okay, Quentin.
Okay, so there is increasing questioning of France's immigration policy and the pursuit of communitarism. 900 young people from France are estimated to be fighting with the extremist forces in Syria/Iraq. A socialist deputy from the Paris suburbs, Sébastien Pietrasanta, who has worked for an anti-racist organization, notes that for some young people, the feeling of having a religious affiliation is stronger than the feeling of belonging to the Republic.
Okay. All right. So increasing questioning of. So people, they're saying, is this a good policy? Should we change it? What's happening here? And, this is, you might know, this is also a popular topic in the United States because of our high levels of immigration from Mexico especially, but also from other places. So the pursuit of, so whenever you have the pursuit of, it's what you're pursuing, what you're going after. So the idea is that in France, maybe there's a philosophy of communitarianism, so trying to be one community, and of course that would be a French community, and trying to get everybody to work together. And some people are questioning that. Maybe we don't really want that anymore. We're tired of that. So that would be like the point of view from these people who are questioning it. And they give this sentence here as an example that there are people from France who are fighting with the extremist forces in Syria and Iraq. So that's kind of like showing there's a divide. Not everybody is agreeing on what it means to be French and how to behave as a French person, perhaps, and what you support, if you're over there fighting for those forces. Okay, so a deputy, that's like a minister or something, a politician, in the suburbs, so outside of the main city area. He's been working on for an anti-racist organization, so against racism. But they're also noting that there's something interesting happening, and that is some people are having more affiliation or stronger feelings, stronger loyalty perhaps to their religious affiliation. So if they are, for example, Muslim or something, that's the number one important thing to them, stronger than their feelings of belonging to the Republic or France. So their religion is more important than their citizenship or their nationality is the idea. So their loyalty is to the religion more than to the country. That's the idea there. Demonstrations against Israel last year spilled over into attacks on synagogues and Jewish individuals and property. Interior Ministry figures showed that anti-Semitic attacks and threats had nearly doubled in France in the first 7 months of 2014 to 529 compared to 276 for the same period of 2013. Instead of being fomented by classic extreme right-wing agitators, anti-Semitism is now driven by mainly young immigrants with Arab and North African roots, the very people whom the far right saw as the main threat to national identity. As a contributor to Le Monde put it in 2012, this confirms a grim reality. There are groups in France determined on violence against Jews. Okay, Rafael?
Demonstrations against Israel last year spilled over into attacks on synagogues and Jewish individuals and property. Interior Ministry figures showed that anti-Semitic attacks and threats had nearly doubled in France in the first 7 months of 2014 to 529, compared to 276 for the same period of 2013. Instead of being fomented by classic extreme right-wing agitators, antisemitism is now driven by mainly young immigrants with Arab and North African roots. The very people whom the far right saw as the main threat to the national identity. As a contributor of the Le Monde put in 2012, this confirms a grim reality. There are groups in France determined on violence against Jews.
Okay. Okay, so they're giving some more examples of what's happening in France before this particular event. All right, so there were already demonstrations against Israel, what happened when they were bombing Palestine, that spilled over into, so there's some demonstrations, but then it kind of led to some attacks. So that's what it means, spilled over into. So it created, or it got bigger, and this is what happened. So the result was, it wasn't just a demonstration or a protest, but it became violent, and so they were attacking the synagogues, which is the Jewish church buildings, and individuals and their property. The figures, so the numbers, also showed that there were anti-Semitic, so that's anti-Jewish attacks and threats, and they're doubling. So there are more and more. And interestingly, it says here, instead of being fomented by, so usually that might be happening because, from the extreme right agitators, so people, who are active, that get out there and they agitate, they kind of cause problems, is what that means, really. Usually they're the ones doing this type of anti-Semitic behavior, but now it's driven mainly by these younger immigrants from Arab and North African countries. Roots just means where you're from, the roots. And so these are, which is interesting according to this person, because it's the very people, these people from the immigrants, they're the ones that the far right see as the main threat to national identity, and yet they seem to be doing similar things, is kind of the idea of that sentence. They're also anti-Semitic. Okay, so Le Monde is the newspaper, so a contributor, somebody who writes for Le Monde, also says that it confirms a grim reality. So grim means dark or negative, so it's not a good thing, but that, they're basically, it's a negative, or, the reality is there are groups in France who are determined, they have a goal of committing violence against Jews. In May 2014, a Frenchman of Algerian descent who was reported to have fought in Syria was arrested after the murder of 4 people at the Jewish Museum in Brussels. 2 years earlier, a French-Algerian, Mohamed Merah, shot dead 7 soldiers and Jewish schoolchildren in Toulouse and Montauban. Israel's reprisals on Gaza after Hamas rocket attacks that summer unleashed assaults on 8 synagogues, a kosher supermarket, and a pharmacy owned by a Jew. Some participants in pro-Palestinian demonstrations chanted "Death to Jews" and "Slit Jews' throats." All right, some more examples of the violence that had been happening already. Okay, Anatoly.
In May 2014, a freshman of Algerian descent who was reported to have fought in Syria was arrested after the murder of 4 people at the Jewish Museum in Brussels. 2 years earlier, a French-Algerian, Mohamed Merah, shot dead 7 soldiers and Jewish schoolchildren in Toulouse and Montauban. Israel's reprisals on Gaza after Hamas rocket attacks that summer unleashed assaults on 8 synagogues, a kosher supermarket, and pharmacy owned by a Jew. Some participants in pro-Palestinian demonstrations chanted "Death to Jews" and "Slit Jews' throats."
Mm-hmm. Okay, so of Algerian descent, descent means kind of your roots, your history, where the people are from. So he's a Frenchman, meaning he has French citizenship, but maybe his parents or grandparents were from Algeria originally, so that's his descent. Um, he was reported to have fought in. So again, whatever we say that is, they don't really know for sure, but that has been reported already. So that's how the journalists say that, to say, well, it has been said or it has been reported that this is what he did, but we don't, know for sure. But we're just saying what another person said. Okay, so he was arrested after murdering 4 people, so at the Jewish Museum. And then just some other things here. Another one that happened, let's see, reprisals here means so Israel, they got a bomb from Hamas rockets, and so they fought back. So the reprisal is like their revenge. So they're taking, what they do because something else happened. That unleashed assaults on. So to unleash, you think of maybe like taking your dog off the leash and your dog runs, around free. Same kind of idea. So if you unleash an assault, it means you cause an assault to happen. So you allow it to happen. So something happens, and then all of a sudden more things happen. So this attack came, and then that kind of triggered or unleashed these assaults. So people went around and they were angry, and so there was an assault on a synagogue. So even though it has the G-U-E-S, we just say synagogues. Kosher supermarket, so a special Jewish way of preparing meats and things, and a pharmacy. So that's just more, violence against Jews is what they're basically saying. And chanting. So chanting is when you're saying, death to Jews, death to Jews. That's a chant, when you're saying something over and over again. And to slit somebody's throats, well, that's to cut their throats. So that's another violent action there, or a mantra or a chant. As Jonathan Arfi, vice president of the main Jewish organization CRIF, noted, anti-Semitism had become a portmanteau for a lot of angry people. This is like a blanket, like a covering for a lot of people. Radical Muslims, alienated youths from immigrant families, the far right and the far left, amid a process of normalization by which anti-Semitism is being made somehow acceptable. The French Office of the Jewish Agency for Israel reported that the climate of anti-Semitism had led more immigrants to Israel in the first 8 months of 2014 than from any other country. Okay, Araceli.
As Jonathan Arfi, vice president of the main Jewish organization CRIF, noted, anti-Semitism had become a portmanteau for a lot of angry people. Radical Muslims, alienated youths from immigrant families, the far right, the far left, amid a process of normalization by which anti-Semitism is being made somehow acceptable. The French Office of the Jewish Agency for Israel reported that the climate of anti-Semitism had led more immigrants to Israel in the first 8 months of 2014 than from any other country.
Okay, good. Okay, so basically just finishing up that a portmanteau is like kind of like like a blanket. So they're using this kind of excuse, and everybody's taking their frustrations out on the Jews is what this person is saying. That's their perception anyway. So a lot of angry people, radical Muslims, so this would be like extremists, not your just day-to-day person who's a Muslim. Alienated youth, so young people who feel like they don't belong, they feel alienated from the mainstream culture or something. The far right and the far left. Amid, so whenever you see amid, it's like it's happening while something else is happening. So amid a process of normalization. Normalization is like things are becoming normal. So he's thinking that this anti-Semitic behavior is becoming somehow acceptable or normal in France. And so this is basically, I would say, just kind of showing the gap that the person is talking about, the gulf between the different cultures that exist in France. So you have, the mainstream French, maybe from the far right, Le Pen people. You have the Muslims, you have the Jewish people, and these people, instead of getting along better and better, it's getting worse and worse. So that's the tone of this article. So I don't know, how true it is, but Quentin, what is your sense living in France? We'll start with you, and then everybody else can kind of chime in and say what you think is happening. And Quentin, what do you see as a person living in France? This gulf between people.
Yeah, the gulf exists.
Yeah.
But it's just a legacy from the old French Empire, and this article just takes the easy way, but it's very difficult to understand what is really going on here. Because we have ghetto, like in USA, but there is just Arabic person or black person there. And yes, it's just ghetto. So there is a gap, yes, a social gap between the ghetto and what's going on in the other part of France. But there is no link between. For me, there is no link between what's happened in Charlie Hebdo, and that gap.
So what do you think is the reason for what happened?
The problem is the same everywhere in Europe. In England, there is also some person engaged with Muslim extremists, the far right extremist Islamist.
Okay.
Yes, and same in Germany, and they are really active in Syria and Iraq, and just the same in France. But there is many person from the name in France, so yes, the problem is just bigger than in other country in Europe.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know if I'm clear.
Yeah. No, I think you are. Yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna let you guys talk, so somebody else can just, if you want to, I can call on you, or if somebody has something to say, either related to the article itself or what you understand about the situation, or maybe what's happening in your country. I know Elena and Araceli, you're both commenting in the chat about what's in Spain, or what's similar or not similar. Luis, did you want to say something? Luis? No. You unmuted your microphone. So Araceli, what do you think about what's happening in France?
Hello,
Did you
Lisa.
hear about it? Oh, hi. Now I can hear you.
Yeah.
Oops, having a connection problem. Okay, Araceli.
No, well, it's for me. I didn't know this situation because, of course, here in Spain we have a lot of immigration, and probably there are a lot of Muslims. For me, it was relevant a figure in the article because it said people think 30% of the population are immigrants. I don't know here in Spain, but it's not true. It's like 7 or something like that.
Yeah.
But here in Spain, I guess there are more than 15%. I'm not sure, but maybe I'm not right. But I think there are even more immigrants than in France. I think in both countries the situation is similar in this way. But yes, we do have a lot of Muslim immigrants, along with people from South America or Chinese. But we don't have. That was what we were commenting. We don't have Jews. Elena says at least consciously. I mean, maybe
well, they
somebody
got a long time ago, right?
Yes, I mean, maybe if I want to become a Jew, I can. I mean, it's a religion. You can freely become some religion, but it's true that in the medieval age, many Jews were established in Spain, and they were thrown away by. So I suppose culturally we don't have
Yeah.
this I don't know how to call this sector of population, but I don't know how is the situation in France, because I suppose they have been there for a lot of time. I suppose they hold business or they have their culture. I think that the main problem is with many of these groups. Some groups go and mix with local people. For example, here in Spain, I believe maybe people from South America, well, they keep their traditions, but they usually mix together very well with the Spanish people. But
Mm-hmm.
some other groups, maybe they keep apart. Maybe Muslims
Yeah.
tend to keep apart a little more. And for example, Chinese people are very, they don't speak the language. They live
Mm.
alone. You never see them in the street. So it's like these kind of groups who don't want to, they don't tend to mix. Maybe they
Yeah.
can make more, cause more problems, because people see them without any trust, and they think they can be doing something that you don't know them. And on
Mm.
the other side, maybe they have their own beliefs, and as the article says, maybe their loyalty is not for the country. I don't know. So I
Yeah.
think the people should talk, mix with the population, with the local culture, and in this way, it's not so. There are not going to be so many problems, because it's like if you are a Muslim and I suppose not everybody for being a Muslim wants to attack a Jewish property. That's nonsense. There has to be some very fanatical individuals, and the problem is if these fanatical individuals are talking to in small groups, it's worse, because regular people don't listen to the rest of the society.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's kind of one of the larger questions, I guess, about immigrants. Like when you immigrate to another country and you're moving from your home country, probably because of poverty, or you don't have enough opportunities for work or war or whatever, and you move to another country. um, yeah, is it should it be, should you fit in, should you conform to the new rules and culture and everything of your new country, or should you hold on to your old country's ways, traditions, cultures, things like that? And I think it's very complicated, and like Quentin was mentioning too, it's like it's hard because the French Empire, they used to be involved in these different countries, and so at that time they were coming into the country and kind of taking over, imposing themselves and their culture onto them somewhat. And now it's kind of a reverse thing, but the immigrants aren't coming with military or with guns or anything like this. They're just coming, but a lot of them are coming, so you end up having a lot of people who are living a different culture and have maybe a different religion and a different way of life, kind of thing. So I think it's always a controversy, like should they become, like somebody immigrants to Spain, should they become Spanish, or do they still hold on to being whatever, Moroccan or Algerian or whatever.
I think it has to be something in the middle, because I've told you that it's not good that they don't mix with the population and they don't uh, understand the local culture. But the opposite is not right. I read about Germany, some extremist right wing groups, political groups, were saying that, for example, Turkish people living in Germany had to speak
Uh-huh.
German at home, and
Uh-huh.
it has to be forbidden for them to speak Turkish or something like that. So,
Mm.
because they were saying like something like that, if they live in Germany, they have to become German. For me, this
Mm.
is absolutely crazy. One thing is that I mean, you have to respect the differences and cultures of everyone, and that's okay. But if it's difficult to find the point where is with nationalism is always the same problem. You respect differences, but when the differences are becoming the most important point for some people, there is going
Yeah.
to be some kind of conflict.
Mm. Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
So it's difficult to find the balance, but I think people should should try. Yeah, because
Well,
politicians always take advantage of this. For example, politicians of the right wing say, "Oh, you see what's happening, so you have to repress them." And the ones on the other side is they take advantage of people being fool or being, blind, because they are guided by their feelings and not by reason.
yeah. Yeah. Okay. Raphael, did you want to say something? You mentioned that you think that you can maintain your culture, but you have to respect, there should be like a mutual respect.
Yes, I believe people should at least have a minimal sense of understanding and respect by the other people's culture and religion and everything related to their belongings. And unfortunately, it's not what we see. And I think it's not only in Europe. I think it's everywhere. Just we have the same problem.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Luis, you bring up a whole another topic of conversation, which we're not going to have time for, but this whole idea of respecting other people's religions or ideas or beliefs, and the idea of freedom of expression, because if you don't believe in a certain religion, it's not holy or sacred to you, it's holy or sacred to the person who believes in it. And that's a
Yeah.
really interesting thing. Not all humans believe it in the same thing. So Luis, what did
Yes.
you want to say about that? Yeah.
No, it's just my culture is different because we avoid
Mm-hmm.
sensitive issues in
Mm-hmm.
public. We don't say in the face of the person to hurt them because we have Brazil is like that. I think this is why people like Brazil because we don't express too much against people.
Right. So you're saying, to not express perhaps viewpoints that will probably enrage another person because of their beliefs about the thing you're going to say or something like that. So to kind of keep the conversation very easygoing, or was that what you would mean?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yes, there's
Yeah.
a mutual respect because I can say about religion, but the person also maybe he'll criticize me and we will never have some conversation, dialogue,
Mm-hmm.
because always the sensitive must be respected.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah, and a lot of time jokes aren't very respectful. They might be funny to some people, but very harmful to other people. Yeah, that's true. Not everybody finds it funny, for example. Yeah. Anatoly, did you want to make a comment, or Elena? Or
Uh,
what?
I agree. I think France needs to uh, learn how live in a multinational society
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
and respect each
Yeah,
society.
that's a good point. Yeah, the idea of globalization is we are mixing more together. We don't have just French people living in France. We are mixing all the time, a lot more, and that's a good point. Anatoly, learning how to live in a cultural situation. We're not, everybody's not like you. They don't believe the same thing. They don't have the same um, ideas. Elena, did you want to say something?
Yes, too much, too many things. So I
Yeah, it's a
can't.
very big topic.
Yes. For
Yeah.
example, I don't agree with you, Luis. I think you can joke about everything, and that's a good thing. I'm going to link but yes, I don't know it's all right, but it's a cartoon from today. That and if you can't talk about anything, well, what's the purpose of freedom of expression? Um, you I think is going to a synagogue or a church or whatever and put fire in it. That's one thing. And another thing very, very different is make a joke about something that you dislike, for example, like religious or so. I think freedom of expression is more important than um, how people can feel about a cartoon or a book or an article. It's a lot more important. But well, there's a lot of issues about this news that we can comment, but I think we we don't have time.
Yeah, we ran out of time, but it might be a good topic for a conversation class, because definitely the freedom of expression one is hard to define. Some people, like Rafael's now saying, you have to be responsible, but are you being responsible, or are you censoring yourself because you're too afraid of what might happen, like you might get killed if you actually make a joke or something like that. So the other point is, if it's a joke, somebody doesn't have to take it seriously. They could just ignore you. Nobody has to buy the paper, that kind of thing. So it's definitely an interesting topic that there doesn't seem to be agreement on in the world. So we'll have to talk about it another time. Thanks, guys, for coming, and have a good weekend.
Thank you, Lisa.
Bye.
Okay.
Thank you very
Bye,
much.
everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.